It was late autumn in a quiet little town where the streets smelled of wet leaves and wood smoke. An old dog named Shadow lay on the porch of a weathered wooden house, his fur silvering with age and his eyes heavy with the weight of memories. He wasn't always alone. Once, this porch was filled with laughter, the sound of a boy running up the steps, calling out his name. "Come on, Shadow. Let's go for a walk." Shadow would leap up, tail wagging furiously, ready to follow his best friend, Ethan, anywhere. From muddy fields to frozen lakes, they were inseparable. Ethan was just a kid then, and Shadow was his world. A loyal Labrador who never left his side. The two grew up together, one learning how to be a man, the other growing older but never losing his love for his boy. Years passed like pages in a book you don't realize you're refinishing until the end sneaks up on you. Ethan left for college, promising he'd come back every weekend. At first, he did. He'd pull up in his old red truck, and Shadow would limp over with a spark in his eyes, his tail wagging like a banner of joy. But then, the weekends became months. The months turned to years, and Shadow learned to wait. The old porch became his post, where he would watch the road every evening at sunset, waiting for the familiar sound of that truck. The neighbors noticed too. They'd leave out scraps for him, give him a gentle pat when they passed, but no one could replace the boy he loved. The seasons changed. Winter came with biting cold. Still, Shadow waited through snow and rain, through nights when the stars looked like cold silver tears in the sky. Inside the house, the lights stayed dim. Ethan's father had passed years ago, and his mother had moved to a retirement home. The house was empty now, except for one old dog who refused to leave, guarding memories instead of people. One evening, the wind howled through the trees, carrying with it the scent of something familiar, motor oil and dust. Shadow's ears perked up. Could it be? A truck rumbled in the distance, headlights cutting through the mist. For the first time in years, Shadow tried to stand, his legs trembling under his weight. His heart raced faster than it had in months. The truck stopped right in front of the house. A door opened, and there he was. Ethan older, worn from life, his eyes tired, but still kind. "Hey boy," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I'm sorry I took so long." Shadow didn't care about the years. He limped toward Ethan, tail moving weakly but joyfully. The two stood in silence, broken only by the sound of the wind and a soft whimper, a sound of recognition, forgiveness, and love. Ethan knelt, wrapping his arms around Shadow, feeling the old dog's heartbeat thump faintly against his chest. For the first time in a long while, Shadow's eyes closed, not from pain but from peace. He was home again. Ethan woke up the next morning to the faint sound of paws shifting against the wooden floor. The old house creaked with every breath of wind, and sunlight slipped through the curtains in soft, golden ribbons. Shadow was lying beside the door, his head resting on his paws, his breathing shallow but peaceful. Ethan hadn't slept much. Memories kept flooding back, the long walks through the forest, Shadow chasing butterflies, those late nights when he couldn't sleep, and Shadow would rest his head on his lap until he drifted off. That dog had been there through everything: childhood joy, heartbreak, loneliness, even the moments Ethan didn't want to remember. He knelt down, running his fingers through Shadow's graying fur. "Hey, old man," he whispered softly. "You still want to go for a walk?" Shadow's tail thumped faintly against the floor, slow but sure. It was the same signal he used to give when he was a puppy. Ethan smiled through tears. "All right, boy, one last time." The air outside was crisp, filled with the earthy scent of autumn. The trees had begun shedding their leaves, painting the ground in shades of orange and gold. Ethan walked slowly, letting Shadow lead the way like he always used to, though now the dog's steps were unsteady, his legs wobbling beneath him. They passed the old oak tree where Ethan had carved his initials as a kid. The marks were faded now, but he remembered it all, how Shadow used to bark at the carving knife, thinking Ethan was hurting the tree. They passed the pond where Shadow had once jumped in after a duck, dragging half the pond's mud back home. Every corner of that path held a story. Every step they took now felt heavier, slower, like time itself had softened to let them have this moment. As they reached the meadow beyond the woods, Ethan sat down on the grass, letting Shadow rest beside him. The dog laid his head on Ethan's knee, eyes half closed, as if he knew this was their last walk together. "You know," Ethan said quietly, "I never told you how much you saved me." He looked out at the horizon, his voice trembling. "When Dad died, I didn't talk to anyone for months. I'd just come home from school, and you'd be waiting by the door. You never asked for anything. You just stayed. You always stayed." A breeze rustled the grass, carrying the scent of pine and earth. Shadow's ears flicked, his breathing slow and steady. I thought growing up meant leaving, Ethan continued. I thought I was supposed to go chase something bigger, but now I see nothing was ever bigger than this. Than you. He smiled faintly, tears blurring his vision. You're the best friend I've ever had, Shadow. You always were. Shadow shifted slightly, nudging Ethan's hand with his nose. It was weak, but it was enough. Ethan rubbed behind his ears like he used to, whispering, "Good boy, my best boy." The sun was starting to set now, dipping low over the hills. The light turned everything to gold. Ethan felt Shadow's breathing grow slower, softer, gentler. He froze, his heart caught between fear and love. "Hey," he whispered, voice breaking. "You can rest now, buddy. I'm right here." Shadow gave a final sigh, a sound so peaceful it felt almost like a whisper of wind. His body went still. The world was silent, except for the distant chirping of crickets and the sound of Ethan's quiet sobs. He sat there for a long time, cradling Shadow's head, his fingers trembling in the fur that had once been so full of life. The meadow glowed under the fading sun, and Ethan felt as though the whole world had stopped to honor his best friend. When night finally fell, he lifted Shadow gently into his truck and drove back home. Under the old oak tree, he dug a small grave with his hands, tears mixing with dirt. He laid Shadow down carefully, covering him with the soft autumn leaves. Before leaving, he placed Shadow's favorite red collar on top and whispered, "Thank you for waiting for me." He stood there long after the stars appeared, until the sound of wind through the trees felt like a whisper, almost as if Shadow was still there, saying goodbye. The following morning was strangely quiet. The house that once echoed with laughter and paws on the floorboards now felt like a museum of memories, still, heavy, and full of ghosts that were both comforting and cruel. Ethan sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee that had gone cold hours ago. He hadn't slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Shadow's face, those kind brown eyes, the wag of his tail, that quiet, loyal patience. He felt like a part of himself had been buried under that old oak tree too. Ethan wandered through the house, running his hands along the walls, over the faded family photos. One picture showed a young boy grinning from ear to ear, holding a wiggling black Labrador puppy. "Our new best friend, Shadow," the caption said in his mother's handwriting. Ethan traced the words with his finger and felt a lump in his throat. He went up to his old bedroom, the one he hadn't stepped into in years. The bed was still made, the posters on the wall peeling slightly from age. On the shelf sat a worn-out tennis ball, half chewed, the last one Shadow ever played with before his legs gave out. As he sat on the edge of the bed, something caught his eye, a small wooden box tucked under the nightstand. It was covered in dust. He pulled it out, opened it, and inside was an envelope with his name written on it, in his mother's handwriting. The ink had faded, but the love behind it hadn't. He opened it carefully. The letter read, "Ethan, if you're reading this, it means Shadow's time has come, and I'm no longer around to say what I should have said long ago. You and that dog were meant for each other. From the day you brought him home, I knew he was special. He protected you, even when you didn't know it. Remember when you ran into the woods during that storm when you were 10? It was Shadow who found you first, who barked until the neighbors came. You were unconscious, but he never left your side. You grew up, Ethan. You left, and that's what people do. They move on. But Shadow never did. Every day he sat on that porch, watching the road, waiting for your truck. He didn't need words or promises. He just needed you. That's love, my son. The kind that never asks for anything in return. The kind that just waits. Don't feel guilty. Just remember that the best way to honor him is to love again, to give another soul what you gave to him. Because that's what Shadow would have wanted. Love, Mom." Ethan's tears fell onto the paper. He pressed it against his chest, feeling the ache of loss mixed with something warm, something that felt like forgiveness. He folded the letter and went outside. The morning light poured through the trees, landing softly on Shadow's grave. The red collar glowed faintly in the sunlight, as if it held its own warmth. Ethan knelt down and whispered, "You waited for me, boy, and I promise. I won't stop walking, not while I can carry what you gave me." A few days later, Ethan packed up his truck and drove into town. He stopped at the small animal shelter on the edge of the city, a quiet place filled with hopeful eyes and wagging tails. A volunteer greeted him, looking to adopt. Ethan hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, maybe someone who's been waiting too long." They walked through the kennels, past barking dogs and shy puppies, until they reached a corner crate. Inside was a trembling mixed-breed puppy, brown with a white patch on its chest, staring up at him with uncertain eyes. "She's been here a while," the volunteer said. "No one's taken her yet." Ethan crouched down and extended his hand. The little dog sniffed his fingers, then licked them just once, as if to say, "I'll trust you." Ethan smiled, tears filling his eyes. "Hey there," he whispered. "I think we both know what waiting feels like." The puppy wagged her tail, small, hesitant, but real. Ethan signed the papers, took her home, and as the sun began to set, they walked down that same road Shadow used to walk, the golden light turning everything soft and familiar. He talked to her softly, telling her about the old dog who'd loved him first, who'd taught him what loyalty really meant. And when they reached the oak tree, he stopped. The little dog sat down beside the grave, her tail brushing the leaves. Ethan smiled. "That's your big brother, Shadow," he said quietly. "You've got some big paw prints to follow." The wind stirred the branches above them, scattering a few golden leaves across the ground. For a moment, Ethan could swear he heard it, the faint sound of paws running through the grass, the jingle of a red collar, the echo of a life that would never truly be gone. And for the first time in years, Ethan didn't feel alone.